I'm very glad to actually see the room full. It's really a mini conference over here. So, well, you took 2 slides off my deck. So the first one was actually to clarify something, because in many countries where I go, especially in Europe, they say, okay, I love cricket. They say to me that I love cricket, I love tikka masala and so on, but I'm not from India. I'm from Mauritius. And yesterday I was in a restaurant. I was explaining about Mauritius, and the person didn't know. So Mauritius is not even on the map. You can't see it on the map. You have to zoom in like to 500x or something. Then you will see a small bit of land over here. That's Mauritius. So I'm from there. A lot of my introduction has already been done. So yeah, I'll just focus on my experience. So I'm in the software quality industry for 15 years. I started the MSTQB, Mauritian Software Testing Qualification Board, in 2019. I got deeply involved in ISTQB. Initially, I started my career in software testing with manual testing. Then I got into automation, then performance testing, and now I'm learning about AI and also security testing and how to blend all the competences I have with AI, how to make it interesting. I also write syllabuses, exam questions. I do peer review on ISTQB material, FOQ material. Yeah, like over here, we have a mini conference. I also organize a mini conference in my country. That's known as TestCon. I heard that there is something similar over here, the same name. I'm hoping that we are not in conflict. They're not going to sue me or something. Yeah. So I'm a conference speaker, ISTQB trainer, I'm a software quality coach. That's a bit about me. Okay. What are we going to talk today? It's about AI, definitely. That's the buzzword right now. So the rise of the machine intelligence, the testing process. So what I'm going to blend is how AI is helping testers in the testing process, starting from the requirement gathering to the design to the execution and so on. And then there will be the self-healing test. That's something which is not quite new. It has been there for quite some time in the market already, but these technology is picking up quite well. I noted that there are still some testers who are not quite aware about self-healing, so we'll talk about that. AI augmented UI test, autonomous testing, which is the new thing in automation now. So that's the new phase of automation, autonomous testing. I'll give some tools as well with examples, and then we'll finish with some questions and answers. I'm hoping that I finish in time. Okay, the rise of the machine intelligence. So AI has not been there recently. It has been there for like 5 decades already, 6 decades already. The problem is, at that time, they didn't have the computation power. That's why now AI is at the tip of our finger, because we have huge computation power, we have huge data. So for AI to work well, we need definitely data. So we started with the conception phase, where there was the Turing test, where someone, a human, couldn't tell whether they were speaking to another human or a machine. So that was the Turing test, and that was the conception of AI, what machine could do. And then we moved towards the exploration. Some companies, let's say commercial companies, actually tried to implement AI in the process. There was one vacuum cleaner, Roomba vacuum cleaner, that implemented AI that could navigate in a room by analyzing the pictures that they are taking and so on, and estimating the distance, estimating where there would be collision and so on, and avoiding those. So that was the first implementation with AI. Deep Blue, the chess machine, maybe you heard about the chess master losing against the machine, and they tried to as well, let's say, find a way out, to say that was very unfair in terms of a competition. So that was also through AI. Then we got into the perfection. So over here we learned quite a lot, and then we tried to perfect it. So there was a Siri, intelligent assistant. There was the Amazon shopping bot, Watson Wins, the TV show. And so, yeah, those were showing the potential of AI. Now we are getting better and better at it. And then ChatGPT, the GPT-3 was introduced and launched. And this is the expansion. Why this was possible? Because in the other phase, in all these phases, we had huge data. So social media actually contributed a lot about AI, because that was the big platform of collection of data that would be used to instruct the machine and also to make it what it is right now. And we are here now, mass adoption. Now, there is no field as such that is in IT operating or interfacing with IT services that is not using AI. There is always a scope to implement AI in some processes. So this is the mass adoption. If you don't adopt AI, then you will be soon redundant. So we are in this phase. Now let's come back to testing. So the testing process. For those who did the foundation, these would be the 7 activities that we have in the testing process. The first one being the planning. Then we have the management and control, the test analysis, design, implementation, execution, and then the closure. So all these are actually impacted by AI because we can use AI in some way. It's, let's say, AI is the buzzword, but we have 3 facets of AI. One is the neural network, the other one is the machine learning, and then we have the big data analysis and so on together with the AI. So in some way or the other, these technologies are quite implemented in these phases. They can easily be implemented. So we'll talk a bit about algorithms as well. So machine learning algorithm, we have the neural network, decision tree, random forest, Bayesian model, and linear regression. I'll focus a bit in detail in the random forest algorithm because this is quite used in the self-healing. And then we have the reasoning technique where we have rules, deductive classifiers, the case-based reasoning, and procedural reasoning. So these would be reasoning techniques. You have the data. This one would classify the data. This one will use those data to get a reasoning out of it so that they can act on that data. So, right, the first algorithm that we are going to use to explore would be the NLP, natural processing algorithm. So that's natural language processing. And then we have within the NLP, we have the word movers distance. So when you use ChatGPT, when you use any text-based or natural language-based AI, you have the possibility for, let's say, changing the text, clarifying the text, or even making it different, to make it more professional, to make it more funny, and so on. So this is the algorithm that is used, the word movers advantage. I've given one example over here. There is an input. The user has to provide credential to be able to log in. So the output, if you use this algorithm, would be the user must provide login information to access the system. It's the same thing, but it is like one way or the other clarifying what is needed. So where is this algorithm used? It is used in static testing. When you have a user story or requirement which is ambiguous in nature, you could use this word movers distance algorithm to make it to clarify it. So you use it in static testing because you get the defect right away. If there is anything which is ambiguous, you can get it clarified with this algorithm. A lot of POs are now using these algorithm. Well, we know it as ChatGPT, but this is the algorithm behind. So they are using these to make sure that they are able to catch ambiguities. They are able to write user stories, requirements, which is more clearer to the developers and to the testers. And this is used in autonomous testing. So requirement refining, static testing, and paraphrasing. These would be the first phases where we have requirement capture. This would be very interesting over there to have it used. Right. And self-healing test. Any one of you is already using self-healing framework? Okay. Any one of you heard of it? Okay, few. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the audiences are still adapted to learn about self-healing. So automated tests can repair themselves, like web element not found. So this is a nightmare actually for automation engineers. The nightmare is we write a test in automation. I'll take Selenium, for example. I try to find a text box or a button somewhere. The test is working for a few days, and then there is a UI change. The SUT, the system and the test is changing. So the element is no longer found because the locators the 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the CSS selector, and so the class ID or whatever has changed, and the algorithm, the automation framework can no longer find the element. So what do we do? Over there, before self-healing, we had to maintain those tests. We had to maintain it. So that was a headache for automation engineer because they had to rewrite tests over and over again each time that there was a UI change. So then self-healing test, which is powered by algorithm like random forest, came into use to still be able to make those tests run without maintenance. So they can repair themselves. They are driven by probabilities. We'll look into that. They use machine learning for sure because they need to have a good base of knowledge for it to work. And they may support multiple technologies and platforms. So there are two phases for self-healing. The first and the most important one is the learning phase. So this is the capture of data. We have the test automation solution. Okay, it can be any test automation solution. It can be Selenium, it can be Robot Framework, Playwright, Cypress, or whatever. In all these solutions, we have a test script, we have the executor, and this would be the self-healing framework. We didn't have this part before, so it was only test, executor, and the SUT, the system under test. So the test script will have the locators, will have the test data, will have everything that will be needed for the test to be carried out on the SUT. Now the SUT change, so the test will fail. There will be maintenance that will be required. The maintained test case will then be executed on the SUT. So in the learning phase, what happens is you run the test with the valid locator, right? The test is working. It's the positive test, right? And in meantime, the self-healing framework is learning what you're trying to do. So when you are locating an element and the element is successfully found on the page, they would try to capture multiple attributes of that element and place it on a tree-like structure. So this is the learning phase. You're feeding the self-healing framework with some information for it to use later on to heal itself. So phase 1, learning. And then the phase 2 is the healing. So now the test script is sending to the executor an invalid locator. Now what is happening? We are having the exception element not found in the executor. The executor is then triggering the self-healing framework. From there, they are trying to find another alternative locator through the knowledge that has been gathered, and then supply a heal locator for it to work on the SUT. So that's the healing phase. For it to work, you need to have a knowledge. So you need to run the test that was running before multiple times. All right, so just to give you what's the real value of this framework. I use this analogy quite a lot when we talk about self-healing. So an automation engineer is like someone who is walking and carrying a backpack. Each step that person is making, the backpack is getting heavier, right? What do I mean by that? The step represent the coverage, the test coverage. Each time that you're able to increase the test coverage, the bag that you're carrying is getting heavier because you have to maintain those tests. It is easy to increase from 0 to 10% within days in terms of test coverage. But it then becomes difficult to increase from 10 to 20, even more difficult 20 to 30 because you have more tests now and more maintenance. So at a certain point in time, you will walk a certain distance or you will cover a certain test, but then one person will not be enough to carry the weight of the maintenance. You will need someone else. You hire someone else and then you carry it together to a certain other distance. And then you will need someone else. So that's a spiral again. So this self-healing framework helps automation engineer to optimize the maintenance. I can give you an estimate. Actually, what I did in my company, there was 52% of my team effort was going into maintenance because we have thousands of test cases written for one product, right? Each time there was a sprint, there was a change, there were hundreds of test cases that was required to be maintained. So 52% of my team's effort were going into maintenance, and we were not able to reach our target set for the year for the coverage because half of my time is already in maintenance. So with this implementation of the self-healing test, we were able to reduce that 52% to 14%. There's still some maintenance required because it is still probability based, right? Still some maintenance, but 52 to 14 is a huge gain, right? We were then able to use that effort into increasing the maintenance. And how is this knowledge stored? So this is the random forest. Why is it called random forest? Because we have decision trees. A collection of trees is a forest. Okay? So what is being stored in these trees? It's actually probability of what you're trying to do. What the framework is trying to do when you're running the test is trying to learn. So they are storing probabilities, multiple places in the nodes, and then once there is a healing triggered, we'll go through all the trees, give you an aggregated structure for a certain heal locator, and then give you a probability of it being the correct one. So that's the first one. That's the self-healing. Now we have the UI. There was sometimes some limitation of automation being not able to do UI test. So with AI now this is possible. They take snapshot of the SUT and the production environment. They do comparison for the two environments, and then they detect the mismatches. One example would be something like this, right? You find the difference quite easily. And if you have pictures, let's say you're trying to do UI test on a website for news. The news are not going to stay static. They are going to have images, they are going to have different text and so on. That is going to change every day. Okay, so the AI will then understand, or the bot will then understand which information is changing, which one should stay constant. And if the constant part is changing, then they will flag it as a defect. So this is the AI augmented UI test. It's not pixel by pixel comparison. It's not like if the image is slightly just down than the other, then everything will be flagged. No, it is really based on AI. So now let's talk about autonomous testing. We started with manual testing, we went to automation, we went to agile testing, we went with CI/CD, pipeline continuous testing, and now we are in the era of autonomous testing. What is autonomous testing? So the test can be analyzed, the test analysis can be done by the machines, the execution and the reporting by the machine as well, the test being generated by the machine, and it learns from its own mistake. So one example for self-healing. Now let's go through the examples. I'll give you examples of all the technologies I was speaking. So Helenium, one good example of a self-healing framework. It blends well with with Selenium, with Robot Framework, with Appium. What it's doing is, again, learning and then trying to implement what it has learned. There is one thing though, when I use Selenium with Helenium, there was one thing that you need to be careful. You need to have a mechanism to unlearn as well. Because once when we were doing the training for the machine, we lost the internet connection overnight. And then what the framework learned was dinosaur on Chrome that should appear because you lost the internet connection. You know, the dinosaur, right? And now it was expecting to find the dinosaur everywhere on the page. So you have to unlearn. How do you unlearn? You take snapshots. So everything worked today, you take a snapshot. You know, you run the same test tomorrow, you take another snapshot. Once you get, let's say, an unexpected result, you just ignore that part and then you take the previous snapshot and learn from that. So that was a learning point as well for me because I had to scrap everything in terms of knowledge and then start over again because it was looking for the dinosaur. So that's Selenium. For the visual AI, we have quite some tools. There is 𝗬𝗲 Visual Diff. This is quite interesting. And Playwright already have it integrated. You have the visual AI tool already in Playwright. And that's the beauty of it. And then you have Applitools Eyes, which is also interesting for visual AI. But 𝗵𝗲 is a commercial tool and the license is very expensive. Yeah. So that's visual AI. And then autonomous. Let's see these two tools. There is the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and the 𝗵𝗲 autonomous. So let's take 𝗧𝗵𝗲. What you need to do in 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is just to provide a user story. You copy paste your user story in 𝗧𝗵𝗲. If you check the negative and positive checkboxes, it will generate the test. Positive and negative tests will be generated for you. And if you then supply the URL, you see only one URL required. If you supply the URL for the sandbox, it can automate it as well. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But with it comes as well some fear that these tools will replace testers, right? So what autonomous can do is first generate test cases, manual test cases in terms of text, positive, negative. You supply the URL, it can go to the URL, it will navigate, will try to find, try to replicate those test cases, what it has written, and then we'll automate it, and then we'll give you the automated test and the result together. What we need then for autonomous is someone to just verify the test cases are valid, and also someone who understands the model behind, to maintain the models, because it is still based on models for knowledge. And it's the same working as well for 𝗵𝗲 autonomous. You can have a demo, you can have a free trial as well with 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲. All right. And AI and testing. Now AI and testing in the knowledge of testing. We have something called 𝗧𝗍𝗀 practical tester. I think the board is already with 𝗧𝗍𝗀. I saw that there was already a banner outside for 𝗧𝗍𝗀 practical tester. This helps you to consolidate your knowledge in testing. It generates question which is based on 𝗧𝗍𝗀 knowledge. During those questions, you write your answer. It gives you a certain percentage of how much of your answer is correct and the recommendation. Why I'm talking about this? Because it has been a tool that I've been working quite a lot. I've been feeding a lot of information into these tools for it to be what it is right now. So this is quite helpful to, let's say, consolidate your knowledge about 𝗧𝗍𝗀, to prepare for the exam for 𝗧𝗍𝗀 and so on. So you can then contact the local board that will help you to have access to this tool as well. All right. Okay. Let me clarify if I have few questions. I had to go quite fast because there was more I wanted to talk, but yeah, there is a big time in front of me. So yeah, questions. Sure.
If it's like we have a if we have a healing of tests, how we should decide it's a bug or it's like mistake in the test and you should fix only tests?
Sure. So this is something. Okay. So this is something which is a very valid question, and I had this as well as part of my demo. When you have a healing happening, you will see that there is, after the tree comparing, there is a probability which is given. So you can instruct the framework to take only the first three. You loop over the first three items that you have, or otherwise, you just take the first one. So that's the heal one. What we want to avoid is to have false negative, like it is a bug or it is a defect in the system, but it is being healed and the test is passing. So in the initial phase, you see, these are the probabilities that are given by the framework. So in the initial phase, there will be some hard work that will be required from the automation test engineer, because there are two reports that are generated. One from the framework, that can be HTML or log file, and the second one is the log from the healing framework. You'll need to compare, you'll need to make sure whether these are the really healed one or it's a defect. In the initial phase, there are some defects that will be healed, but you need to capture that, right? And once you capture it, you run it again with the correct locator, it will learn. And then you reach a phase where you have 95% confidence level on the healing process. But that took months for us. In the first few weeks, we were just running automation every night, just for it to to learn by itself. Okay, and then once we lost the internet connection, was learning dinosaur. Then we had to scrap all the knowledge. We start over again. For the next 3 months, we went through the log. We were correcting those locators that were not supposed to be healed, right? That was wrongly healed in that case. And yeah, because then you can have false negative that will escape to production. That's true. So this phase is also very important. And there is one emerging job with this, because we have test automation engineer, but we also need to have a model analyst, because the model analyst will take care of the knowledge over here. So that's a new profile. So someone who will understand how to manipulate Docker, how to manipulate the model that we have for the healing process, and also how to make sure that the knowledge is consolidated. The good knowledge is consolidated, the wrong one are just flushed out. So that was, again, another competency that was required for the test automation engineer. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's exactly what I expected, because like manual job like still here, and it's very important. So automation needs tool, and it should help also not only to like automation for automation, but also found the bugs. True. Thank you.
It's not exactly going to replace it, but my friend over here, Joel, was painting a bad picture of AI going to replace us in Mauritius in my conference. Everyone was panicked afterwards. Yes, please.
Have you noticed any performance hits using this self-healing? I mean, he haven't talked about performance. Yes.
So you mean the performance in terms of execution of the test, right? Okay. So when you implement it the first time, it is going to learn everything. It is going to take all the knowledge that it can from multiple locators, right? This takes some time. That's why we were running the test overnight, just to consolidate the knowledge. The test was taking 13 hours, but it was running on Selenium grid. So it was like 3 hours of execution on each node. So let's say from 3 hours, it took an additional 30 minutes on those for the first time. And then once you execute it really after the consolidated knowledge, will take only milliseconds. The difference was only milliseconds. The hardest part is really the knowledge. Is really consolidating this knowledge. This is where it will take a lot of time. That's why the learning process needs to be after working hours, overnight. The test will learn, will take some more time there, but once you're ready on production, then with the knowledge, it will take milliseconds additionally. So there was not much in terms of drop for execution, but for the learning, yes, there was some additional time was required for execution. Good. Other questions? Yeah. I still have 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Yeah. Make the most of it.
Beside Ethereum, which tool could we use for Cypress, for instance?
Okay. So we have paid ones as well. We have one which is hosted by Microsoft and Azure that is compatible with Cypress. There is Helium is making adapters now for robot framework. So it's working on robot framework. But for Cypress on TypeScript, there is already one on Azure. You upload your test on CI/CD, and then there is the healing process on Azure pipeline. So if you're using Cypress with Azure, then there is already one which is already deployed, but you need to pay for it additionally. That's Microsoft's way of working, but you need to pay for it, but it will work on Cypress as well. You're using Cypress?
Yes.
Okay.
Using Helium 𝗧𝗵𝗲.
Yeah, that's true.
Do they provide a feedback on selector's quality? I mean, if it's complex and fragile, does it somehow highlight that?
Yes, you have an index. You can have an index and recommendation as well. If you're using, let's say, an absolute locator, starting from the root node, html/div/whatever, and you're not using a relative one, it will flag it out. It will give you multiple locators that would be more simpler. Sometimes it is difficult to find one which is, especially when you have developers, which are, I hope there is not much developer over here, developers who are copy pasting elements on the page. They will not change the class, the ID. The ID is supposed to be unique, but it's not going to be unique. So the locator in the report, the locators healed, they give you multiple for the same element, and you can choose then which one is shorter, concise, and let's say meaningful as well. So it gives you in the report, the Selenium gives you. And Selenium is open source. You have only to pay if you need the support, but it is open source. You can download the code and change it according to what you need. Another last question. 10 seconds.
Thanks for questions. Thanks, Lovelesh, for the interesting topic.